When we talk about the most mysterious and terrifying crimes in 20th century America, one name is almost impossible to skip over: Zodiac. A serial killer who spread terror across the country, not only through a string of brutal murders, but through taunting, cipher-filled letters. He liked to toy with the police and brag about his crimes as if they were trophies, and for decades, no one knew who he was. People knew him by exactly one name, the one he gave himself. Millions of people tried to crack his letters. Books were written, films were made, and the legend only grew. Recently, a private organization even claimed to have uncovered his true identity. So who was he really? To answer that, we have to go back to where it all began. It begins on December 20th, 1968, a Wednesday in Solano County, California. David Faraday, a 17-year-old high school student, was out with his 16-year-old girlfriend, Betty Lou Jensen. They pulled into a gravel turnout on Lake Herman Road, a quiet spot the locals called Lover's Lane. They had barely parked when another car stopped beside them. A man got out, pointed a gun, and forced them from the car. Thinking it was a robbery, they obeyed. Instead, he shot David point blank in the head. Betty ran, and he shot her in the back, 5 rounds in all, dropping her about 25 feet away. Then he was gone. A passing driver found them and called the police. Both were dead, killed with a .22 caliber gun. It was dark, the road was remote, and there were no witnesses. Police could only call it a spur-of-the-moment crime. All of Solano County held its breath. They had no idea this was just the opening chapter. 6 months later, on July 4th, 1969, it happened again. Michael Mago, 19, and Darlene Farron, 22, were parked at a golf course in Blue Rock Springs, in Vallejo, about 4 miles from the first scene. A car pulled up behind them. A man got out, blinded them with a flashlight, and opened fire. Darlene died on the way to the hospital. Michael, by sheer luck, survived. Around 12:40 that morning, the Vallejo police got a call. A calm, unidentified man claimed the attack and admitted to the Lover's Lane murders too. The call came from a phone booth a few blocks from the police station and a third of a mile from Darlene's home. By the time officers arrived, he was gone, not even a fingerprint left behind. From Michael's account came a description: a white male, 26 to 30, around 5'8", heavyset, with short curly light brown hair. It wasn't much to go on. A month later, on August 1st, 1969, 3 newspapers each received an anonymous handwritten letter: the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Examiner. The writer confessed to the Lover's Lane murders and included details the police had never released. At the bottom was his signature, a circle crossed by a line, like a gun's crosshair. Each paper got a piece of a cipher. Put together, they formed a message of 408 characters, the Z408. "Solve it," he said, "and you'll know my name, and print it on the front page, or I'll kill every weekend until I have a dozen." The papers printed it. 6 days later came a second letter, opening with a line that would become infamous: "This is the Zodiac speaking." It was the first time he used the name. The Z408 was cracked, not by police, but by a married couple in California, Donald and Betty Hardin, working from the printed cipher over a few days. It was a substitution code, made harder by using many symbols for a single letter, and when they decoded it, the message was chilling. "He liked killing people," he wrote, "more than hunting game, more than being with a woman, and those he killed would become his slaves in the afterlife." But for all his boasting, the message never gave his name. Being decoded didn't stop him. It only made him bolder. On September 27, 1969, a father and son fishing at Lake Berryessa heard screaming. They found a couple on the ground, covered in stab wounds. The woman, Cecilia Shepard, 22, was still conscious and told police what happened. She and her boyfriend, Brian Hartnell, 20, had been approached by a masked man in a black hood and dark glasses, with a circle and cross symbol on his chest. He made them tie themselves up and then, without warning, drew a knife. Brian was stabbed 6 times. Cecilia, 10, she slipped into a coma and died 2 days later. Brian survived. At the scene were a military boot print and, written on the victim's car door and marker, the Zodiac symbol and the dates of his crimes. That evening, a man called the Napa County Sheriff to claim the attack, this time leaving a fingerprint on the phone. It was Zodiac's 3rd murder, and still no one knew his name. 2 weeks later, on October 11, 1969, he struck in the heart of San Francisco. Teenagers reported a taxi driver shot across the street in Presidio Heights. 2 patrol officers, Don Falk and Eric Zelms, were nearby and even passed a suspicious white man on foot. But dispatch had wrongly said the suspect was black, so they let him go, a mistake many would come to regret. The driver, Paul Stein, 29, had been shot in the head with a 9mm, part of his shirt torn away. 3 days later, Zodiac wrote to the Chronicle, admitting the murder and enclosing a piece of Stein's bloody shirt as proof. He called the bloody fingerprint at the scene a fake, planted to mislead. It was the 4th case he officially claimed. By now, killing in the dark wasn't enough. He wanted an audience. He called into a live television program, demanding a specific host and guest, giving the name Sam, and saying he feared the gas chamber. But police traced the calls to a psychiatric patient. It wasn't him. While the nation held its breath at their screens, the real Zodiac was out there somewhere, at his leisure. Soon after, the Chronicle received a new cipher, this one 340 characters long, the Z340. Perhaps stung that the Z408 had fallen so easily, he made this one far harder. For more than 50 years, no one would solve it. His letters kept coming, and so did the fear. On March 22, 1970, a woman named Kathleen Johns ran into a police station, pointed at the Zodiac sketch on the wall, and said, "That's the man who just tried to kill me." 7 months pregnant, with her baby in the car, she'd been flagged down on Highway 132 by a man who claimed her wheel was loose. He fixed it, then reappeared when it came off, and offered her a ride, only to drive for an hour and a half past every gas station, hinting he meant to kill her. She leapt out at an intersection with her child and hid in a field. He later returned to her car and burned it. Police, once again, felt they couldn't prove it was Zodiac. The letters grew stranger and darker. He sent a 13-character cipher, the Z13, and threatened to blow up a school bus full of children, signing off with a tally: Zodiac 10, the police 0. He demanded people wear his symbol like a badge, and when they didn't, claimed to have shot a man in his car in revenge. He described a time bomb hidden somewhere in the Bay Area with a map and yet another cipher, the Z32. The bomb was never found, and that cipher was never solved. Then, on Halloween of 1970, a reporter named Paul Avery, who had covered the case, received a card from Zodiac promising a clue to his name. Soon after, an anonymous tip pointed him to an older, unsolved murder. 4 years earlier, on October 30th, 1966, an 18-year-old named Cherry Jo Bates had left the Riverside City College library and was found the next day, beaten and stabbed to death on campus. Near her body lay a man's broken watch, stopped at 12:24, its face spattered with paint and a military boot print. At the time, police saw no link to Zodiac. Remember that watch, it comes back. On January 29, 1974, Zodiac wrote to the Chronicle one last time, mocking the film The Exorcist and signing off: "Me, 37, the police, 0. The FBI confirmed only 4 of his murders, but the true number may be far higher. It was the last letter he ever sent." Everything after was judged a forgery, and then Zodiac simply vanished. Over the years, some 2,500 suspects were investigated. 2 stood out. The first was Arthur Lee Allen, a former serviceman who had done time for child molestation. A coworker said Allen had talked about killing couples at night and writing to the press as Zodiac before Zodiac ever appeared. In his home, police found a watch bearing the Zodiac symbol and a typewriter matching the killer's. Michael Mageau even identified him from a photo, but the evidence was only circumstantial and DNA didn't exist yet. Allen died in 1992 at 58, and when his DNA was finally compared to a sample from a Zodiac letter in 2002, it didn't match. The second was Lawrence Kane, who knew cryptography and had suffered a brain injury in a car crash. Kathleen Johns picked him out of a photo lineup as the man who tried to kill her, but his handwriting and fingerprints didn't match either. One by one, every suspect was ruled out. Then in 2020, more than 50 years on, the breakthrough came ironically from the pandemic. Stuck at home, a man named Sam Blake gathered a team. David Orenchak, an American software engineer who'd chased the Z340 for 15 years, and Jarl van Eyck, a Belgian programmer. They suspected the cipher wasn't meant to be read left to right. Using software of their own, they tested hundreds of thousands of arrangements, split the message into diagonal sections, and even accounted for words Zodiac had misspelled on purpose. At last, the Z340 gave way. Its message: he hoped they were having fun trying to catch him. The man on the television show wasn't him, and he didn't fear the gas chamber because it would send him to paradise where his slaves were waiting. The FBI recognized the solution. And yet, like the Z408, it revealed nothing about who he was. Of his 4 ciphers, the 2 shortest, the Z13 and Z32, remain disputed. A French engineer claimed in 2021 they spelled a name close to Cain, but no expert accepted it. Some even believe his symbol and the timing of his crimes follow an obscure calendar, though no one can say whether that's design or coincidence. Which brings us to the most controversial claim of all. In 2011, a Los Angeles filmmaker named Thomas Colbert founded a group called the Case Breakers, a team of retired FBI agents, detectives, and forensic experts. On October 6, 2021, they announced they had solved it. Their suspect, Gary Francis Post, born in 1937, a former Air Force serviceman turned house painter who died in 2018 at 80. A photo from his youth showed a scar on his forehead that, they said, matched the lines in the Zodiac sketch. He had a history of violence, and a former inmate claimed Post had confessed to being Zodiac in prison. They tied him to the 1966 murder of Cherry Joe Bates, and this is where that watch returns. It had been bought from a military base. Post was Air Force, treated at a base hospital 15 minutes from the scene. The paint on its face matched his trade. The boot print, the brown hair in the victim's hand, and a typed letter using words Zodiac favored, like squirm and twitch, all of it, they argued, pointed to him. But the Riverside police who worked the Bates case did not agree. The team also gathered accounts from 3 people. A former follower named Wynn described Post as a cruel man who tortured animals and once buried a murder weapon. Michelle, the common-law wife of Post's son, claimed Zodiac was actually 3 men, with Post in control, and that he'd had her attacked after she left. And a neighbor called Granny recalled him teaching her to shoot and beating his wife in silence. From this came a theory that Zodiac was never one man at all, but a group, with some writing the letters and others doing the killing. Still, experts pushed back hard. In decades of study, they noted, no witness had ever described lines on Zodiac's forehead, so the scar proves nothing. The only real answer is DNA. In 2002, a profile was pulled from the saliva on Zodiac's stamps, but it matched no one on record. All that's needed now is to compare it with Post's held by the authorities. And on the Case Breakers theory, neither the FBI nor local police are convinced. So who was Zodiac? Post or someone else entirely? Maybe the truth will surface one day. Or maybe his real name went with him into the ground and will never be known. The case inspired books and films, from Dirty Harry in 1971 to David Fincher's Zodiac in 2007, with Jake Gyllenhaal in the lead and Robert Downey Jr. as reporter Paul Avery. And though the man himself is likely long buried, the fear he spread still lingers in the American memory. So what do you think? One killer or many? And will we ever really know? Let me know in the comments. That's all for today. See you on the next case.